making this video about Venus retrograde. So when Venus goes retrograde, it tends to make us deeply aware of how much we are trading off and selling short our desires and our own sense of happiness in order to please another person. Venus is the planet where we naturally look to do that, because we all have a natural tendency and capacity to yield to another person and share what makes us happy with them. We all want those closest to us to also feel respected, appreciated, and to just be happy. And Venus is the planet that gives us this awareness. If my happiness has to come at the expense of my lover or my sister or my mother or my friend, then I'm not going to be very happy. And we get in a conundrum with Venus energy. The big struggle with Venus energy is we can't make everybody happy all the time. We would like to. I would love that everything I say makes everybody happy. But I know that's not possible, because if you try to please everyone, then you please no one. Least of all yourself, because then you're just selling your own integrity short. So again, every planet has a kind of opposite correlation. Venus and Mars harmonize because Mars is opposite Venus. It rules those signs that are opposite. So to have your convictions be meaningful, which is Mars, or I should say, to have a compromise be meaningful, it has to be mixed with a conviction, with a strong identity. Otherwise, it's just shallow, and it's going to eventually ring false. And even the people around you, if you've been around people who are just always trying to be so nice, right? And you're like, it's not authentic. And you see, this is what happens. Someone tries to be so nice, and then and that goes on for a while, and then all of a sudden you never hear from them again. You ever seen those people? I don't know what happened. They were so nice. They seemed so nice, and then one day I just never heard from them again. Well, this is why. Because they were being so Venus-y, and then inside, all of the little interactions that most people have to kind of clarify points where one feels disrespected and the other one doesn't, and just saying, wait a second, I'm not so sure about that. What do you think? Oh yeah, okay. And you kind of work it out, and you have a real and authentic Venus type of interaction. Instead of doing any of that, let's say that kind of person who is just a constant yes person holds all of that inside, because let's say their Mars is completely weak. And inside, what they're doing, instead of saying, oh, you're taking advantage of me, oh, you're not appreciating me, even though they're not even telling you what's happening, they're not even sharing with you whatever it is that they're going through, because the Mars is so weak. So this is what can happen in excess with Venus, is someone's just so nice, or you see people that are just, let's say like at work, you'll see this kind of thing, or in a relationship, you're like dating someone and they're so nice, and then all of a sudden, bam, the thing comes out. All of this stuff they've been letting build up comes out, and all of a sudden you realize what was really going on. And of course, it's then projected onto you like you were oppressing them, for example. This is the Venus problem. But underneath it all, it's because Venus is the energy that's trying to compromise and trying to harmonize our energy with someone else. And so when it goes retrograde, this process starts to come out quite a bit. And of course, we see this in our romantic relationships as much as any, but it's also in certainly like business partnerships or any relationship with adults. And in particular where adults have mutual desires on the line. This is where you can know that it's Venus involved. It's not a mother and a daughter. It's not a boss and an employee. It's not or mother or son. It's not parents and children. It's not boss employee. It's not even, it can be sibling, but it's two equals. And these two equals have mutual desire. This is why it's often not siblings either, because siblings don't usually have a mutual desire, except to maybe get the approval of the parents or something. But we learn a lot about Venus energy by our sibling relationships, which you might be saying, well, I thought they were Mars. they are Mars, but Mars is always harmonized with Venus. We actually learn how to fight and win and lose with the sibling energy through Mars, and then we learn also to be more compromising and tolerant also with Venus. Everything has a harmonizing energy with it. So the sibling part that's related to the battle is Mars, but then the sibling part that's related to the compromise is Venus, and they're always working in tandem. So two adults with mutual desires on the line, Venus is the one negotiating. There's no hierarchy. I can only fulfill myself with your compliance. That's what Venus is. And of course that's romantic relationships, that'll be a business partnership. Again, and it means I can only get what I want with your cooperation and even approval. Maybe not necessarily approval, but that would also help. But certainly with your cooperation. And I make the caveat of not your approval, because sometimes you can coerce the cooperation. You can make someone cooperate if for a moment or so you have some kind of leverage over them, but then that's going to come back and get you. And again, Venus is always doing this. Venus is the part of us that's transactional, where we remember every little grain of unfairness. People who think, again, people mix up Venus and the moon all the time, because the moon is where we don't care about that. We're not keeping score with the moon. The moon is selfless love that we just want to give because we want to give love, because that's our nature. Like caring for a pet. We don't care, we don't ask anything of the pet. We just want to love the pet. We just want the pet to let us give it love. We're not scorekeeping or thinking, well, I gave you love, but you didn't give it back. Never think of it with a pet. Or with like an infant child. But we completely think about it totally with romantic partners, with other friendships, with like a business agreement where, wait a second, the agreement says I get 15.4% of the profits. I added it up and it's only 15%. Where's my 0.4%? You said it was, where is that $1.50, right? Again, it's not always that hard, but we can only work through business agreements, romantic agreements with adults, equals, with a Venus energy, where we're totally seeing, is this fair? Is this fair? Is this fair? I'm giving you this. Are you appreciating what I'm giving? Are you giving it back? Are you trying to take advantage of it? Like you have a business partner and the thing is, nothing is ever completely equal. Like you have a business partner, you're not going to be doing things exactly the same. Like one partner brings one thing, one partner brings another thing, and you try to say, well, I give 47% of this, so you have to give 47% of that, but sometimes they're completely different things. One might be time, another might be money. And so you strike a balance. This is the same that's true with romantic relationships. They're never equal, but they have to be even. They have to even out. I've heard it described, romantic relationships, for example, or even these kind of business relationships are, it's living with the constant unfairness and the constant inequality of it, and trusting that it doesn't feel fair now, but I trust that I can live with the unfairness because you can live with the times when it's unfair, when I'm being unfair. It's kind of like a mutual unfairness on some level, always a little bit. One person is always doing more than the other the next, but then the other one does more, and it just kind of goes like this. This is Venus. And so when it goes retrograde, we get, this whole thing comes out, and we reflect on it, because the retrograde planet is where it backs up and where we have to reflect on what we're doing in that area of life. It becomes confusing. If we're smart, we will introspect, because what happens is those kind of relationships get confusing. They get confused, they get distorted, they get pressured and challenged, because often we'll feel unappreciated, and then we'll have to reflect and say, well, was that me? Am I disrespecting them? Are they disrespecting me? How much am I stating my no compromise zones clearly to the other person? How much is that happening in real time. Again, you can see how this has to happen in real time. You can't let stuff build up forever and then come back and go, well, wait a second, what about this? And then you did that, and then you did that. And the history lesson of grievances that come up all of a sudden becomes unreliable. When people do this and they blindside us, it's hard to deal with them, right? So these things need to be done all the time. Things need to be negotiated. Some people can't take it. So they have a hard time advancing not just their relationships, but their career as well. I have to deal with a lot of entrepreneurs, of course, people that get readings and stuff. They want to know how to do the next thing in their life. This is often where much of their energy gets stuck. They might think, look at my 10th house. Again, there's so much illusion in astrology, the way people practice it. I'll be interviewed sometimes by people, or students ask me questions. So how do you see career? 10th house, 10th lord, this, that. All of that shows one thing. It shows the willingness to take responsibility and how much responsibility we can handle, how much pressure we're willing to handle. But so much of what makes a person able to actually advance in their career, in their relationships with others, is this thing I'm talking about. Being able to align other people with your vision, communicate it, respect them, hold your boundaries. All of this stuff is what allows us to elevate. So when Venus goes retrograde, these things get challenged. And we'll often have a relationship end, or we'll have a distance, or we'll go back into some kind of partnership or some kind of relationship to fix it and do it better the next time and really learn something from it. But it's often where we get confused, and we have to face this in a deeper way. And so, it's something that, of course, we see it most often in a romantic relationship. That will generally show when Venus goes retrograde. Our relationship gets pressured in that way, and we renegotiate the contract a little bit, or we see hopefully what we're doing, not just what's being done to us. But again, depending on someone's natal Venus, like where Venus is in their natal chart, they have a lot of intelligence with it or not. And, if Venus is retrograde in someone's natal chart, this is generally something that's confusing for them. How to express themselves and hold these boundaries without feeling insecure, without repressing themselves and then blindsiding people later. Again, when something's retrograde, we kind of lack confidence with it. So either the person often will wait for somebody to compromise with them. Again, this is like if it's in the natal chart. Well, I'll wait for you to compromise with me. Well, you should be able to tell that this is this is not fair. Or they'll be very insecure about it and compromise too much. Like let's say if it's in a feminine sign, if it's in a feminine sign, let's say in retrograde in the natal chart, they'll be very sensitive to asserting themselves. They'll be very insecure about it, and again, they'll definitely they can be the ones who are very sort of peacemaking all the time, and then all of a sudden inside they're feeling unappreciated, and then one day you just never hear from them again. Or again, it can lead to that sort of passive-aggressive tendency. And then they want you to come to them and sort of baby them to make it better, rather than, dealing with the dynamic authentically. They can let it pass, and inside be letting these things build up and getting their feelings hurt, and then just kind of going inward about it, waiting for you to recognize. Again, and then one day they just ignore you and stop calling you, and you're like, what's going on? Well, this happened. You're like, well, I had no idea. So again, there can be these kinds of things when Venus is retrograde. It can also be very powerful where the person, again, if the dignity is high, like if it's retrograde and let's say it's in its own sign, it's in Taurus. We've had Venus go in retrograde in Taurus in our lifetimes quite a bit. Maybe Capricorn, because it has also gone retrograde in Capricorn during our lifetimes. Then it can be something where there's a lot of intelligence around this process and a lot of awareness, and this thing gets worked out, and there's a lot of natural empathy and a lot of skill around it. And of course, if it's in a natal chart, you also have to look at the houses that it rules. That also shows the disruption. But In general, Venus retrograde in the sky, when it goes retrograde in the sky, it's a time when we all have to grapple with that. If it's retrograde in the natal chart, it's something that we deal with on a personal level that's sort of back and forth. So it's quite important, of course, because Venus legislates and manages all of our relationships, and we want them to be smooth, where we're respected and the other person is respected as well.